everybody, this is Joel Marshall and this is LearnMyComputer.com. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We are going to talk about the files that we've been looking at, what a file is, and what a program is. So the relationship between programs and files, that's what we're talking about today. A lot of you understand this concept, but I want to make sure that everyone really gets their head around this because it's going to help us in the future. Even if you know about this, you might learn something in this as well. So here's a typewriter. We used to use these to make documents. Here's a piece of paper. We would put the piece of paper into the typewriter, we'd type on it, and we'd come up with a letter or a book or something that we put on that paper. Now we use computers, mostly because it's easier to revise this document. And so we use something called Microsoft Word most of the time. That's probably the most popular program that we use to create documents. But now the document is not a piece of paper, it is a file, like the files we've been looking at. Here's one file that we've been looking at called lettertojoel.docx. So lettertojoel.docx is the name of this file, and just like the piece of paper in the typewriter, this file goes into the program Microsoft Word. It is opened by Microsoft Word. We change it, we save it, and we now have a document. So just like the paper goes into the typewriter, the file lettertojoel.docx goes into Microsoft Word. So what is this docx? It says .docx. That is called a file extension. So .docx is called a file extension, and there are various file extensions, too numerous to mention. But what I want you to understand is this particular file extension tells your computer that this is a Word document. This is a document to be used by a word processor. .docx. Sometimes it's just .doc as well. All that file extension does is tells your computer, when you double click on this file, open up a word processor, open up Microsoft Word. This is very important because when you send a document to someone else and they may be on a different computer, this is what tells that computer how to open the document. A lot of us have emailed people documents before and they say, you know, I can't open this file. Well, most of the time it has to do with the fact that there's not an extension on the document, such as this one, .docx, or the person on the other end doesn't have the program that opens the particular file. So that's the relationship of file and application. And we're going to see why that becomes important when we start to look at some other examples. So let's say I have a record. A lot of you remember records as well. Some of you still have them. And let's say I've got a record, I want to play some music. Well, I would not put it in my typewriter. It just would not work. I would not try to play that in the typewriter. I don't know what that would sound like, but I can't imagine it being very good. I would have to find some other appliance to play that record. Well, I happen to have a jukebox from the 70s, and I could put the record in the jukebox and play the record and hear music. So the same situation occurs on the computer. If I have a file that plays music, here I have Love Reign O'er Me, the Who song, and it is Love Reign Over Me .mp3. And .mp3, a lot of you have heard of MP3 players, like iPods. MP3 is the extension for a music file. There are other music file extensions, but that's just one of them, a very popular one. Now, the same way I wouldn't play the record on the typewriter, I would not try to open this MP3 file in Microsoft Word. It just would not work, would not sound good. So instead I will use a different program. A lot of us use iTunes. It is an Apple program, but people download iTunes on their computer and play music through that, and this would be a perfectly viable way to play this MP3. It is essentially your jukebox on your computer. So let's take a look at another example. On the television, if I have a television, I take a television program and I play it on the television. Well, what's the equivalent on the computer? The equivalent on the computer is if I have a video file such as wildlife.wmv. In the same way that I take the television program and I put it on the TV, I will use a different application or program called Windows Media Player. And you can see the icons match up. This is the icon for the file, the WMV file, wildlife.wmv. I want to look at some birds moving around, and I would open it with the application Windows Media Player. Plays media. And when I double click on a WMV file and I'm on a Windows machine, most of the time it will open up in Windows Media Player. So that's great. So now we're starting to get a hang of this. I'm going to use another example here just so we get to understand what's happening. And this example is going to be a little bit more interesting because this is just something I'm going to throw out there and I want you to kind of understand, and we'll talk about it later. This right here, what is this? This is Internet Explorer, Microsoft Internet Explorer. And the big blue E indicates that program. It's a program or an application. And this program allows us to view files just in the same relationship that we had, say, with Microsoft Word and Letter to Joel. Internet Explorer allows us to look at files that are on the internet. And that means that there are files out there for us to read on computers that are not our computer. They're out there in the world. And we call this the Internet. So Internet Explorer is a program or a browser. That's the type of program it is. Just like Microsoft Word is a word processing program, this is an internet browsing program, meaning that you're just browsing through web pages on the internet. And here's a web page. You would open that up in Internet Explorer, and that is just a file being opened up by Internet Explorer. The file resides on a different computer or server out there on the internet, and I am opening it up and looking at it just like I'm opening up Letter to Joel in Microsoft Word to read the letter to Joel. So that's just an extra concept there that I want you to understand. Web pages are opened up by Internet Explorer. Word documents are opened up by Word. Media files are opened up by Microsoft Media Player, Windows Media Player. So those are the concepts. Now, if you have any questions or suggestions, please email me at joel@learnmycomputer.com. That's joel@learnmycomputer.com. And I will see you next week.